Would you care for a cup of coffee?
If it needed me and no other family member would take it in.
Is that a yes?
Yes.
I thought they were supposed to deliver our fancy new self-cleaning oven today.
They did.
But I was just in the kitchen, saw the old one there. Where's the fancy new self-cleaning one?
Well, that was one relaxing shower.
This comic strip has issues.
Whee!
What are you doing, pig?
I just discovered if I jump in the air and land on my buttocks, it doesn't hurt.
That just means that your butt is now so insanely fat that it provides a total cushion against any impact.
I'm calling it a superpower.
Hi, I'm looking for a book.
Then why are you bothering me?
Because I couldn't find it.
Then either we don't have it, or you're too dumb to find it. Either way, I'd say you're screwed.
Looks like they're opening a new 24-hour seafood restaurant downtown. It's called, Cod All Nighty.
Is that so?
Yeah. And to celebrate the fact that they serve fish from all over the world, they're giving the first 100 customers a free, I can't pronounce it. Atlas?
Atlas. It's pronounced Atlas. And those are worth like $50. Let's go get one and sell it on eBay.
Whee!
Hi. We'd like an Atlas.
Oh, I think we gave away the last one. Wait. We do have one left.
Yes! Free at last! Free at last! Thank God Almighty, I'm free at last!
Say goodnight, Gracie.
Hello! Aren't those cartoons great? You'd probably find them funny if you enjoy dark and dry humor, which I do. Anyways, the creator, his name is Stephen Patisse. He used to be a lawyer in California, but he got bored of his work and he started drawing these cartoons. And at first he didn't have much interest from the outside or success, but he got his big break. His big break came when the very famous Scott Adams, the creator of Dilbert, he gave thumbs up to his cartoon, and pretty much overnight, Pearls Before Swines became a success. So now his comic strip is in over 650 newspapers across the world. So what does this cartoon have to do with our teaching today? Well, absolutely nothing at all. The only thing it has in common is the title, Pearls Before Swine. So the title of this comic strip comes directly from the biblical reference in Matthew chapter 7. Do not give what is holy to dogs, and do not throw your pearls before pigs, otherwise they will trample them under their feet and turn and tear you to pieces. So this is definitely the biblical reference where it comes from, but he doesn't say why he chose this title. I would guess it's a bit of sarcasm. He takes Jesus' teachings, and this is his theme of how his pearls of humor should be received by us, swine. So the words of this metaphor grabs our attention. So what does Jesus mean here? What are these pearls? Who are these swines and dogs? So this passage actually comes near the very end of the most famous sermon, Jesus' famous Sermon on the Mount in Matthew chapter 5 to 7. And these 3 chapters in Matthew is the gold standard of Christian living. And as Anabaptist Mennonites, these red letters of Jesus, it summarizes, it encapsulates what it means to be a true Christian. So if you don't read any other part of the Bible and you just focus on these 3 chapters in Matthew, then you would be right on track with living out God's will and purpose for your life. But these are hard. These are crazy hard teachings to live out. Things like enemy love, turning your other cheek, not worrying about life. As hard as they may be, we have the Holy Spirit who gives us grace and mercy to live the way of Jesus. All right, so let's look at this passage, Matthew chapter 7. Do not give what is holy to dogs, and do not throw your pearls before pigs, or they will trample them under their feet and turn and tear you to pieces. Okay, let's take this at face value. At face value, this doesn't seem like a very hard teaching at all. Pigs. Think about the last time you visited a farm and you saw a herd of pigs. And at what point did you think to yourself, you know what? I'm going to take off my Tiffany's necklace, which I put on this morning for the very reason to come here to meet you pigs. So piggies, here you go. Have my pearls. Enjoy them. Why would anyone in their right mind do this? It has never ever crossed my mind to bring pearls, nevertheless to give them to pigs or to dogs for that matter. So this would not be a commandment that I struggle with. It takes no effort for me to obey it. Okay, I'm just making light of this passage because obviously it's not meant to be taken literally. Clearly, Jesus did not intend us to read this in this way. Instead, Jesus uses this mini parable or this metaphor to help us learn about decision making. Okay, so what's the meaning of this passage? Well, traditionally, this passage has meant this. Pearls, they represent sacred, holy, precious things that are valuable to you. And these treasures are given to you by God, and they have eternal value. So one should protect these pearls, keep them safe and guarded. If you don't, if you decide to kind of randomly scatter them and give them away to animals like hogs and dogs, then be prepared for consequences. Be prepared to not only lose these precious things, but even those things you give it to will harm you. Okay, so now we need to ask, who are these dirty hogs and dogs? Well, they would be people who cannot appreciate what you've given to them, and they see your pearls only as rubbish, and they see it as offensive. So this is the basic interpretation of this passage. Now, practically speaking, this is challenging. It kind of makes it hard to put this into daily life. How do we know who to give our pearls to? How do we live out our calling to share the gospel and make disciples of all nations? So the first thing we do, let's look at context. Context is always the key here. So in the previous verses, Jesus has been dealing with the matter of relating to other people, specifically relating to people who are unlike yourself. So in verses 1 to 5, he taught his disciples not to judge. Do not judge, so that you will not be judged. For in the way you judge, you will be judged, and by your standard of measure, it will be measured to you. So, 3 powerful words. Do not judge. Very straightforward, absolute. And even non-Christians, they will know this biblical commandment. So as followers of Christ, we should not judge other people. Now, the problem with this verse is that it has been used as a blanket statement. So when you get into a disagreement with someone, a common response might be, don't judge me. You're not God. You don't know me. Don't judge me. And what happens is this pretty much stops the argument. There's no going forward because you can't make an evaluation about anyone, about anything. And in our society, there's no absolute standard of morality, and we don't want to be seen as judgmental or pushing our morals on other people. So, instead, should we just allow people to live and let live? Let people kind of be? Let them be free without criticism or opinion? So you can see this leaves us in a difficult dilemma. As Christians, we genuinely want to help others, especially people who may be making unwise decisions. When someone close to you, a friend or family member, is making a poor decision which may be harmful to them, can you honestly just say, live and let live? They're going to end up killing themselves, but who am I? I'm not supposed to judge them. I'm not their God. Now, would this be the right thing to do? Would this be the Christian and right thing to do, is to say nothing and to do nothing? So back to Jesus' commandment. Do not judge others. Don't condemn others. Don't write people off. But then in verse 7, look what Jesus does. He seems to label people dogs and pigs. Is he contradicting himself? He just warned us, don't judge people, but he calls people dogs and pigs. It's ironic. So hold on to this thought. We'll get back to this. So if we use Jesus' commandment as a blanket statement, don't judge, then this would mean there are no standards, no laws, no moral code. You can do whatever you want. And can we actually live in a society where there are no standards, no expectations? Is this what Jesus meant? Is this what he meant by not to judge? If it is, then we would be in trouble. If we may never make any value judgments, if we never discriminate what is good and what is evil, we'd be lost. Anarchy and chaos would rule in our world. So I think it's common sense that tells us it's impossible not to make any human judgments. Jesus doesn't allow us to say, I don't care. It's your life, none of my business. Because as a family of faith and love, we're bound to each other. So we need to care and help each other, especially when problems come up. But we must do it in a way that doesn't condemn people. So let's look at what Jesus teaches. Verse 1 and 2. Do not judge, or you too will be judged. For in the same way you judge others, you will be judged, and with the measure you use. So Jesus is speaking of a judgment where we operate on superiority. We have these good feelings because we artificially make ourselves believe we're better than them. We're not like those people. And with this kind of judgment, we're actually pressuring them to change or to conform to us. And the pressure in my culture is that of shaming, public shaming. And we've all been there, and it's terrible. When I've done something wrong, my parents will call me out, expose my mistakes and my faults, and make a public spectacle out of it. Oh, no. Your son is smart. My son, he can even get into that kind of school. He became a pastor. Or, I told my daughter not to get involved with that man. She gave up a great future and career to be with him. Shaming. What's the purpose of shaming? Well, it's about control. It's about manipulating emotions, putting them down in hopes they will change and do what you want. And you know what? It's worked. It's worked on me because the shame and the guilt, it was so painful and so embarrassing. I never wanted others to know about it. So how does God respond to this way of judging or any other way? God says this, I too will judge you by the same standard. Wow. So whatever standard you use on others, God will hold you to that same standard in which you judged other people. So if you shame others, God will shame you back. So this should be a warning to us. This is why we must be very gracious to others, especially with our family. We all need God's grace to be able to love others without condemning them. Okay, the next thing that Jesus says is funny. Verse 3. And why do you look at the speck which is in your brother's eye, but do not notice the log that's in your own eye? Or how can you say to your brother, let me take the speck out of your eye, and behold, the log is in your eye? Well, this is a bizarre image, and kind of imagine this guy walking around with this log lodged in his eye socket, and he's looking around at other people as he maneuvers throughout the day. And he goes about his day looking at other people's problems. And then in verse 4, it gets even more ridiculous. So with this massive log or plank sticking out of his eye, he says, hey, let me help you out with that. Let me pluck out that tiny splinter in your own eye. So you see, it's quite comical because you have a much bigger problem and you're trying to help someone with their tiny issue. It's like the blind person trying to lead a sighted person. Now, this is how ridiculous it is when we judge others when we have a bigger problem in our own life. And in reality, we all have logs. We all have planks. We all have blind spots that we can't see. And you do things like, at least I'm not like them. Or, I'm better than they are. And Christians have had a bad rap for doing this. We judge with logs in our own eye. We look down at others without evaluating ourselves. So this eye plank is a big problem. So verse 5, Jesus tells us the right way, the right direction. He says this, you hypocrite, first take the log out of your own eye, then you'll see clearly to take the speck out of your brother's eye. All right, so we all know what a hypocrite is, right? You say one thing, but you do the opposite. You condemn someone for something you do the very same. Hypocrite in Greek is the expression that means acting or pretending. So when you're a hypocrite, you're being a bad actor. So where do we do? Where do we go from here? It says first and then. So very two important concepts here. First and then. So what's the first thing that we do? Jesus says, first, take the log out of your own eye. Very straightforward. Check that blind spot that you have. Remove that hypocrisy in your own life. Fix your spiritual problem first. And once you do this, is your job finished? Are you done? No, there's a second step which begins with then. Then you will see clearly to take the speck out of your brother's eye. So here Jesus gives you and me the go-ahead. Now you can see clearly. Now you can help someone with the speck or log in their own eye. So you have the green light. Jesus gives me the green light to care for someone else. So it's not good enough just to mind your own business and when you see someone making a poor decision. We're not called to be silent and to disengage. No, he doesn't tell us to suspend our discernment or our ability to look and see what is right and wrong. It's important that we do this, and we need to do this. So to see the speck or someone's problems will require a form of judgment. We are called to make a judgment call. You are called to make an assessment. But make sure you come to that place where you have put aside your own pride, your own sense of superiority, and not to be judge, jury, and executioner. So we have to come down and stand alongside of them, going to them because you're serving them through your process of seeing their blind spots. So yes, you are making a judgment, a discernment, a judgment call, but you're not judgmental about it. You're holding that person in an attitude of love and compassion that doesn't condemn them, but wants to serve them. So speck removal or log removal becomes an exercise of care and watchfulness over each other. And we need God's grace and mercy to do this. When we do this, people will notice us. People will see the difference because we are serving with a gracious attitude instead of one that is superior and we are better. All right, so we've dealt with the logs. Now it's time to deal with the hogs and dogs. Verse 6, do not give what is holy to dogs, and do not throw your pearls before swine. So we understand Jesus is saying, don't waste your God-given gifts on hogs and dogs. So the main question now is, how do we know? How do we judge and discern who are these hostile hogs and dogs? I think this question flows from Jesus' teaching about being judgmental. We need to wisely discern whom we share spiritual things with. So let's talk about dogs. Some of you love dogs, some of you are gracious dog owners, and dogs are lovable, cuddly, loyal friends. But when we put Jesus' context here, his comments is about wild dogs, wild hounds that are roaming around in the open. So pigs, in the same way, pigs were domesticated back then, but for the Jew, pigs, hogs were unclean animals. So wild dogs and pigs, they have a certain nature about them, right? What is the nature? They are animal in nature. So you can't blame a dog for sniffing and scratching and barking because that's the nature. In the same way, you don't blame a pig for waddling in mud and snorting because that is the nature of a pig. However, there would be times when we, humans, would be blamed for how animals react. When we mistreat them or when we are tease them or provoke them, we're to blame. And this happened to me when I was a kid, and some of you remember my dog attack story. So our next door neighbor, they owned a dog, and I saw it every day from behind their screen door. And being the kind of kid that I was, I teased that poor dog. I would put my face right up to her face. I would bang on the door. I would growl at her. And to me, it was so funny watching her get all riled up and crazy. But then suddenly, the door swings open and she runs around and she bites me. Yeah, it wasn't too bad. Short visit to the hospital and an anti-rabies shot. So who's to blame? Who's to blame for what that dog did to me? Me. No one else to blame but me. I provoked her. I got her upset and she attacked. So when Jesus labels people as pigs and dogs, he's not doing this in a pejorative or in a derogatory sense. No, it's a parable of warning. He warns us, make good discerning judgments when you decide to give your pearls to others. And there will be people who will be hostile to the things of God. Not only will they reject you, but they will bring harm to you. So does this mean we limit to whom we share the gospel with? Does it mean we withhold the good news of Jesus to certain people? If the answer is yes, does this mean we're disobeying the Great Commission? Let me try to answer this with a story which was posted about 2 years ago, and you heard about it. Some of you have anyways. His name was John Allen Chow, an energetic young missionary from the United States. And he was planning to bring the gospel to a remote village in the North Sentinel Islands. And this was a personal challenge for him because the indigenous people who lived there were one of the last peoples on earth who have not been contacted by outside people. And there have been past attempts to contact them, but it was met with unwelcome violence. But Chow, he had faith in God. He did all the research. He studied their anthropology and linguistics. He even took his immunizations and he was ready to go. And he even packed gifts to offer to his new friends. So he flew down there to the closest airport, and when he landed, he paid a local fisherman to take him to the Forbidden Island. And as he approached, he saw a few tribespeople, and he waved his arms and he shouted, "My name is John. I love you and Jesus loves you too." And he could see them carrying spears and bows in hand, and they shouted back at him too. And one of them even shot an arrow at them. So unfazed, he decided to come back the next day. So the next morning, he told the fisherman that he would land on the island and he wouldn't be back. So he hands the fisherman a letter to give to his family, and he paddled away. And the fisherman, being fearful of this young man, he decided to stay until the next day. And the next morning, he saw a horrifying sight. He saw a limp body being dragged across the beach and buried in the sand. Very sad, very tragic. We need to heed Jesus' warning. Do not give dogs what is sacred. Do not throw your pearls to pigs. Our pearls are indeed precious. They're beautiful, but they're not instant meals to be given away. So we need to be wise. We need to be sensitive and discerning. We cannot just scatter pearls to people who are not ready to digest it. So instead of controlling, pushing, and pressing, we need to be loving. We need to be sensitive. We need to be patient and kind. We need to ask and seek and knock. May we always be wise as serpents and as innocent as doves. May we be able to be people who create spaces where others can really see the beauty of Christ. So may we always continue to bring this message of hope and be the hands of Christ who bring the good news.